Go get my best-selling book, Sheep Know More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's a book that shows you how attackers look at you so that you can turn around and look at yourself from their perspective. It shows you the technique of attack and defend, how to look at yourself from the attacker so that you can turn around and truly see where your defenses need to lie. It gives you a greater awareness, an understanding of where the avenues of approach and the vulnerabilities that can be exploited, as well as a guide to how you can come up with plans of action when there's nothing that you can change. Isn't that the greatest threat that you have, where there's nothing you can do about it? This shows you how attackers could exploit that area and how you can avoid it altogether or mitigate the circumstances. Sheep Know More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. And for the children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a book of pictures with lessons built into them. You give the book to the child, and then you go to teamlittlebigs.com and you get the lesson plans. Great for children 1 to 8 years old. Start them early. Or children that are learning disabled. Sheep Know More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. And The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Let's start the show.
The truth has arrived.
My name is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. And welcome back to the Friday show. I took Thursday off, and so I'm back on Friday. And let me tell you, I know I've been talking a lot about the headlines. This week has been very interesting with the type of headlines that are out there. But there's two stories in particular. Actually, there's 3 or 4 stories in particular that are incredible. But overall, there's 2 audio sound bites that you have to hear these sound bites, because it's very telling about what's going on with liberals in this country. One of them is the whole QAnon thing. I'm no fan. It's a cult. Okay. If you're listening to this, I don't want you to run away and say that guy's a jerk. I don't want to listen to him anymore. Just listen, stop for a second and listen to what I have to say. I'm not trying to say that you're a dumb person or that you are not a patriot. You're misguided. Okay. You're very misguided if that's your thing. And this Q shaman, the guy that had the face paint and the flag and the animal skin over his shoulder and walked, it was in the Capitol building. He's still in jail. This is probably the most peaceful person that was there. And he's still in jail. And he was interviewed by CBS, which is Paramount Plus. It's their online news streaming. You know how everybody has these streaming subscription-based things that you can get on now, and so they have one of these shows on there. And Lori Siegel is the person, and I'm not going to say journalist or reporter, that was interviewing him. She's an idiot. Okay. Basically, she's nothing more than a young liberal idiot with nothing but opinion. The whole thing was her opinion, and how it's just smug. And you'll see as I play it, you can actually hear it. You don't have to see it to understand how smug she is. And it's not really a question and answer. It is, she's just basically saying, this is the way it is, and how do you feel about it? So she can make him sound stupid. So, I mean, I'm not saying the guy's smart, but again, I'm no fan of QAnon and this fake anonymous crap. I'm actually, today when I pointed something out on Twitter, somebody came back, and because I was talking about Christopher Wray and how the intelligence is, how that's all they talk about now. It's just white supremacy and QAnon stuff, and how it didn't. February or March 4th came and went, and nothing happened. They were saying all this stuff was going to happen. It didn't happen, and somebody said that's probably because they're Q. I was like, man, yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure that the left has great influence as far as that goes. And remember, it's Q anonymous, right? So anybody that knows how to write these proofs and knows how they read could write the stuff. and fool people. And people are saying, no, it's different. Q is not just one person. It's the whole group of us. Stop, please, just stop. That's the problem. Okay. One, if it was one source, then I could kind of understand where they're coming from and what their experience level is. But when you got just a ton of people out there making crap up, what happens is the consumers of the information become the distributors of the information. And so it's basically like lying to yourself because you think you know something that you don't. And that's what was occurring. And so anyway, this guy's on there, and it just shows you the self-entitled smugness of the left in how this interview goes, and so unjournalistic. And then the other one is the girl, and I have to. She's not a girl; she's a young woman, and she's in her 20s. She's 25, I believe, and it's just horrific listening to her story. And I'm gonna play that for you, and I want you to hear that. She's the one that is accusing Cuomo of sexually harassing her, and she's not the one that Cuomo apologized to the other day. I don't think she was the one. In fact, the whole thing was not really an apology. It was an act. It was just an act. I'm not going to resign, but I apologize if I made somebody feel uncomfortable. I apologize if it was inappropriate. I didn't mean to be uncomfortable. Where, I'm just at work and I'm friends, or I'm at this wedding and I'm just, being, funny or whatever. And that's his apology, right? It's not, remember, apology a lot of the times is not an admittance of guilt, right? It's not a confession letter. It's not a confession. It's just, a lot of the times an apology is just it's like a massage. Like when somebody gets mad at you and you go up behind them and I'm saying like your brother, sister, your girlfriend, mom, whoever, and you kind of rub their shoulders and say, "Are you calm down now? I didn't mean to make you mad. I'm sorry." That's what an apology is in the case of Cuomo. It's kind of a massage to try to make people calm down when they know they did something wrong. So I'm going to play that soundbite for you as well. But let's start off with the QAnon interview and how ridiculous this was. It's the smugness in this is unbelievable. But it's not just her. It's also the host of this show, CBS This Morning. I wish their chairs would slip out from under them and they just bust their rear ends on the ground, because they need a wake-up call, these people. It kills me that this thing was created called television or really just mass media. You got radio and social media platforms, and all the good that could be done from these platforms about truth and awareness and God, and it's just infested with these immoral, unethical, know-it-all, narcissistic weirdos. It's just consumed by them. And I've seen it from the backside. I've seen it from, behind the scenes in media. It's just consumed. So let's play this. I want you to hear this. The whole thing, just listen to the smugness throughout.
A judge will hear arguments tomorrow on whether the man known as the QAnon shaman should be released before his trial. Jacob Chansley was arrested after the January 6th assault on the Capitol.
Now listen to how he describes him. Again, this guy regrets going in there. I mean, that's his biggest regret, because he walked everywhere he went and he just talked. He didn't do anything at all. But the smugness of these people reporting, just listen to this.
You see him there in an outfit that would get you in trouble in a 7-Eleven, let alone the Capitol. He's got face paint on. He's got horns, buffalo skin, coyote skin, a lot of fur. He's telling his story for the first time.
Now, here's what really aggravates me about that part, right? You can hear the other people laughing in the background. And see, here's one thing about January 6th, whether you agree with what they did or not, you should listen to why the people went there. And that's what's being missed in all of this. Nobody is taking into account why those people went there. And I'm not justifying what they did. I'm definitely laughing at the tactics that they used. If you wanted to do something that was real, you certainly didn't do that. Showing up and lollygagging around does not get results. Ask any rebellion in the world, it doesn't get any results. Standing around and locking arms around the building and being well organized would have shown more force than what any of these people did going into that building. However, it's the reason why they showed up. That is what's being missed by everybody. And that, in the beginning, they think he's being a jerk and kind of being snotty about this guy and the walking in there with the bearskins or whatever. But the fact is, it's a serious thing. It's a serious thing because why they showed up is a real problem. Whether or not they carried out insurrection or they did all this stuff, I mean, we don't even know the reality. Christopher Wray won't even tell us how that cop that died actually died. They said he got hit in the head with a fire extinguisher and then collapsed at work, but they're not releasing anything, which makes me really kind of wonder if he didn't have some kind of pre-existing issue, and when he got to work, he just collapsed coincidentally. I don't know. But the fact is that the media, and especially these people here on CBS, none of them, and even the politicians, have no clue as to what they're involved with and how detrimental it is to this country. Some of them know because that's what they're trying to do, but even those people don't understand what is going to happen in this world, not just in this country, but in this world when America completely collapses. They have no clue. All right, so let's go back and listen to this.
From jail as he faces some very serious charges, up to 20 years behind bars. Chansley spoke with Lori Siegel for the brand new streaming program 60 Minutes Plus.
Your actions on January 6th were an attack on this country. Do you understand that?
No, they were not, ma'am. My actions were not an attack on this country.
Now, I agree with him here. His actions were not an attack on this country. Again, I could go over this 1,000 times. The people who showed up January 6th showed up to reset government, not overthrow government. Now, that's the difference between these people and their mindset and the reality of Antifa and Black Lives Matter and the communists, and they call themselves socialists. They want to overthrow the government. They're just doing it in a different way. Instead of showing up and lollygagging around and getting in fights with cops, the left is burning down cities and getting people in positions of congressmen and congresswomen, senators, the presidency, attorney generals, sheriffs, chiefs of police, state and local legislators, and so on and so forth. School board is the biggest thing. And so they are literally committing insurrection and really subversion in a overt manner, sometimes of violence, but most of the time by organized, I don't even know if there's a word for it. I almost called it occupation, but they're organized, and their subversion really is what it is, where they get people in positions and they kick up activist groups, not to solve a problem, not because somebody's oppressed, but because they know that it's going to cause division. That's why they do these things. So anyway, let's go on. And the way she started out was accusing this guy. Listen, she's interviewing a guy in prison who's not been through trial, but she's saying what you did. Let's replay it. It was against the country. You know that, right?
That is incorrect. That is.
I spoke with Lori Siegel for the brand new streaming program 60 Minutes Plus.
Your actions on January 6th were an attack on this country. Do you understand that?
No, they were not, ma'am. My actions were not an attack on this country. That is incorrect. That is inaccurate entirely.
How would you describe them?
My actions personally?
On January 6th.
My actions on January 6th?
On January 6th. Listen, I know people can't control their voices, but if your voice sounds stupid on air, maybe being on air isn't something that you want to do. But if you do get on air and you have a stupid voice, at least be a professional that asks questions and allows the person to respond, and then you can talk about it later instead of interviewing somebody like you're a 16-year-old who has an opinion. And that's what she sounds like.
How would I describe them? Well, I sang a song, and that's a part of shamanism. It's about creating positive vibrations in a sacred chamber. I also stop people from stealing and vandalizing that sacred space, the Senate. Okay, I actually stopped somebody from stealing muffins out of the break room. I also said a prayer in that sacred chamber because it was my intention to bring divinity and to bring God back into the Senate.
Now, I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, he was destined to be put in jail if that's why he showed up and took part in this. I mean, this guy believes his own crap. That's the problem. And that's the way it is with this QAnon cult. People, their self-importance, and it's a altruistic type of narcissism that they think that they're the saviors and that it won't be saved without them. And they end up believing that what they're doing is a real cause. And then when you show up to make believe and you actually get yourself involved in something, you're going to pay the price. You know, like I said before, you know, everybody wants to be a warrior until it's time to go to war. That's because people believe things like, you know, I always get emails from people, hey, my son or this guy is going to be a SEAL. Well, first of all, I'll tell them, okay, first of all, you don't know if he's going to be a SEAL. This is not a joke. You don't just, kids that say, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a SEAL. I tell them, I say, listen, you grow up or you graduate high school, you can compete to get an opportunity to go to SEAL training. But until you've been to SEAL training, you know, it's a pretty big stretch for somebody. It's almost like somebody saying, I'm going to be a rock star someday. There's this percentage of singers who actually get chosen. You don't just make it. You get chosen to be famous. It's very small. And it's even smaller for people who become SEALs. So the point is, if you're not looking at life in a realistic way, and you're just floating by the seat of your pants, if you have you think you're a shaman, or you think that the little cult group that you're involved with is going to save the nation, if you're not seeing things clearly and you don't understand reality of what's going on and what it's going to take to fix that, and you're not committed to it, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And if what you're going to do is going to get you in trouble, but you're going to do it for the right reasons, you better be prepared for that. These people were clearly not prepared for this. Let's go on.
But Jake, legally, you were not allowed to be in what you're calling the sacred chamber.
And that is the one very serious regret that I have, was believing that when we were waved in by police officers, that it was acceptable.
Do you still believe you're a patriot?
I consider myself a lover of my country. I consider myself a believer in the Constitution. I consider myself a believer in truth and our founding principles. I consider myself a believer in God.
Okay. You got to watch this video if you can, because he does not look the same in jail as he did all made up. And her voice, it wouldn't just, it just could break glass from stupidity. That's how bad her voice drives me nuts. And her smug look, there's nothing professional. She literally looks like somebody who is a sophomore in college who got the opportunity to be in front of the camera because she's pretty. And she's all about herself. That's what this looks like, and that's about the depth of that interview. Listen to what she says here. And this is the same. Now, I guess because she's not doing the interview, she can give her opinion. But what happened to journalism where they give the facts, right? The whole thing that she's saying is opinion. And when she talks about how he, is still loyal to Trump, the smirk in her face, because she hates Trump, which is another thing about media and quote-unquote journalism. There is no neutral reporting at all.
Eagle is a 60 Minutes Plus correspondent and the founder of ... Media. Lori, good morning.
Oh, I'm going to run right out and check out that ... Media. Oh, boy.
To you, we should add, while he was protecting those muffins, he also had a flagpole with a spear point at the end that prosecutors say was a weapon. And he wrote a note to Mike Pence saying justice is coming. So clearly the shaman contains multitudes. What surprised you the most?
Yeah, I think what was...
What is a multitude? He said he has multitudes. What? Anyway.
interesting, especially at the end of this interview, he was shouting, see me from prison. And, you know, this was one of the most seen men in America on a day that was a stain on democracy here in America. And I said, well, what do you want people to see? And he kept saying, I'm not violent, I'm peaceful, I'm a shaman. But then you put those images, what you were just talking about, you put those images together, and that isn't an image of, you know, of peace. This is the new face of extremism in America. So you have to.
Now, here's something I've been talking about a lot, and I said something about this on Twitter. It bothers me greatly when the media and their narrative, right, which is a leftist, not a left-leaning, it's a leftist narrative, right? They've been preaching this for several years about the white supremacy, nationalism, domestic terrorism, and now Christopher Wray, who's so stupid that he doesn't even know that Antifa is an international terrorist organization. Everybody I know in the FBI knows that Antifa is a terrorist organization, domestic and international. And Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, is so stupid, he didn't even know that. And then he comes out in front of Congress and gives this testimony yesterday, and it sounds like a complete buffoon, and saying that all this stuff about, and I talked about this the other day in I think it was on Wednesday, I talked about this. He comes out and talks about these cases and cases. You know, we got these many cases in domestic terrorism, this many cases, mostly white supremacy. But what he's not telling everybody is that those cases don't unfold to be anything. Just like this shaman guy. He, you know, this is a guy who walked in, took selfies, went in and stood around and then walked right back out. He didn't run in there. He didn't come in there and hurt anybody. He had a flagpole, which they talk about, it says it had a dagger. It looked like it had an arrowhead on the top of it. He didn't threaten anybody. He just walked around. And you could actually hear him telling other people to calm down in the videos. The guy is somebody that should get trespassing at the most and treated to the level of, to the extent of what type of a criminal he was. But they won't do that. And the FBI and the DHS and all these people in law enforcement and the intelligence agencies are talking about these threats on March 4th that came and went. Their quote unquote facts are the narrative from the media. They are literally following the same narrative as the media. They are just repeaters of a political narrative. That's it. That bothers me greatly because you're literally, I want you to think about this. Liberal or conservative, I want you to think about this. You are literally staring at henchmen when you see law enforcement and intelligence doing this. If they'll do it against QAnon or anybody else out there, good or bad, if they follow the media and political narrative, if they follow that narrative and law enforcement and intelligence is not following facts and figures and truth and spitting those out, then you are looking at henchmen. Henchmen that are doing the deeds of the left. And that should bother you greatly. Let's listen to the rest of this. It bothers me terribly listening to her voice.
Pay attention to it.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to it. It's hardly letter from Birmingham jail, but it is relevant for the following reason. Like many others that day, Jacob said he was there because he thought that former President Donald Trump, quote, had his back. Let's take a listen to that part of the interview.
What was it about Donald Trump that you felt so fiercely loyal to, that you hung on every word and you...
It's like listening to a 12-year-old interview somebody. It's really, the depth of her questions are it's just disturbing. Sorry, I keep saying that.
Interpreted his words in certain ways.
I developed a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump because it seemed like the media was picking on him. It seemed like
this guy's just as stupid as she is, by the way.
The establishment was going after him unnecessarily or unfairly. And I had been a victim of that all of my life, whether it be at school or at home. So in many ways, I identified with a lot of the negative things that he was going through. And I honestly believed and still believe that he cares about the Constitution, that he cares about the American people. And that's also why it, wounded me so deeply and why it disappointed me so greatly that I and others did not get a pardon.
First of all, you're an idiot, so you're not going to get a pardon, okay? You should have expected this was going to happen. If you're going in and doing that stuff. I mean, in the climate that we're in, what are you people thinking?
Regret that fierce loyalty?
I regret entering that building. I regret entering that building with every fiber of my being.
But you don't regret the loyalty to Donald Trump?
No.
Interesting, Lori. So he's not loyal to the president today?
No, he said, behind bars, he says he still is loyal to Donald Trump. I think what
There's her smug smile.
so fascinating to me is he is holding so tightly onto those beliefs that put him in jail. He believed that Donald Trump had his back. He said to me over and over again, and he's still behind bars. And when we're talking to him, you still hear some of these conspiracy theories. He doesn't believe that the election was won correctly. He believes that it was fraudulent, which of course it was not.
She doesn't know that. She doesn't know that because whether it was or not was never proven in a court of law, and none of the evidence was ever brought up. Listen, one of the things about voting, in case you don't realize this, voting electronically, there's always going to be ways to screw with that election. Always. If it's electronic, it can be messed with. And there was never any case where that evidence or an investigation into that was ever done. So she has no clue what she's talking about. That's how stupid these people are in media. Because they believe it, they think it fact. Well, I can tell you from being in investigations for over 20 years that it more often than not, than what you think is this is definitely the answer. There's always a twist. There's always something there. And you can't go on what your belief system is. In fact, when it comes to investigative reporting or investigating, it's best that you put what you think and what you believe to the side and you let the facts guide you, and you don't make stupid comments like that. It's funny. When she's interviewing him and when they're doing this report, they're trying to make him sound stupid. They came out looking worse.
Begin to really understand the depth of the conspiracies, that happened, that this man showed up on January 6th. So it's interesting to try to understand how we got to this point. And I think it's important to understand how we got to this point.
They're not even trying to understand that. The way we got to this point is because the government has failed and because the government doesn't give two shits about any of you or me or anything. It's about their parties. And the GOP they put people just like this girl into politics all the time. There's no ethics at the local level. None. And when it comes to the way that they're reporting this stuff, there's no facts. She has no understanding of the reality of how far we've gotten away from the founding documents that men and women have died for, not just from the time of the founding fathers until now, but before that, the thousands and thousands of years of people oppressed to get to the point where some men and some women were so fed up that they came up with some documents based on the law of Moses, based on their godly intuition and understanding of the problem. And they created these documents and founded this nation and fought against a king that was more powerful than they were. And they defeated them and created this nation. And if we just stuck by those documents, we'd be fine. But all these people, these quote unquote progressives. They don't. It's like saying that an airplane's at 30,000 feet that loses its engines, and it tilts and starts barreling towards the ground. It's progressing towards the ground. Yeah, it's progressing to death. And that's exactly what these people are doing. They are progressing us straight into the ground. We don't need to progress any further than the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. But you're never going to tell these people. And the people that showed up there that day, whether what they did was right or wrong, they showed up for the right reasons. And it wasn't just because Donald Trump told them to. Donald Trump saying what he said and show up on January 6th. I've said it 100 times. I disagreed with it. I was telling people don't go there. It's not going to end well. If anything, it's just to feed the grifters, the Women for America First and the Stop the Steal and all these other idiots that were out there grifting. It was going to feed their pockets, and nothing was going to become of it because you weren't going to be given any direction. I'm a Donald Trump supporter, but I did not support that. And it gave fuel to these people that they could use for years and years and totally shoot down in media, which they own, the facts, and replace them with conspiracies. If we were smarter, we wouldn't be at this state. But, you have progressives who these liberals and leftists, they just come together and I hate to say it, it's like maggots cleaning a body, which I've seen at the Body Farm in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they have about 100 and, I don't know, when I was there, like 170 bodies laid out, just rotting in different positions, like half of them under a house and half of them outside of the house or wrapped in a tarp or in a trash can. And then they have, I don't know, maybe it was the other way around. They had 100 bodies like that and like 175 bodies that were buried in shallow or deep graves or whatever. And they study all this stuff about life and death. When you look at a body and there's literally millions of maggots consuming the body, and then you look over here and you see this other body in a different state of decomposition, you start to realize very quickly that everything is very uniform. What looks like chaos and stinks, and it's actually a beautiful thing that's happening. It's nature in a process. Flies don't show up to bodies all the time. They show up at a specific time and lay their eggs, and then they leave, and then the maggots come out, which is the larva, and they come out and they consume things. Certain animals will only come up to bodies after they've been dead for a period of time. I mean, the whole thing and the way that it's consumed and breaks down, the way your body breaks down itself, it's all very uniform. That reminds me of the Democrats. Whereas on the other side, you got the conservatives who mill around like a bunch of piranha, just consuming whatever they can. When they're angry, they go after that cause, or they're angry, they go about that cause until somebody, even in their own group, says something they don't like, and then everybody turns against them because all these conservatives now, everybody thinks they know what's best. One thing I definitely learned from the SEAL teams that the FBI just did not get, okay? The SEAL teams realized that if you seek out the best standard operating procedures and then you become the best at that even if other people are discovering new ways of doing things, until that is perfected, you stick with what you know. Until you can perfect and you see that this technique is better, or this tactic is better, you stick with your standard operating procedures, and most likely you're going to defeat the other person who may have an advantage and may have discovered something new. But until you can get good at that, you stick with what you know. You're going to be a lethal force. Conservatives haven't figured that out. They haven't figured that out. And we're just all over the place. Everybody's, let's rally. Let's get a car rally going. Look, that might have been great for a while to get people motivated, but I'm telling you right now, car rallies, for all these people out here on New York, go do your car rallies. It's not going to do anything. Look at the left. If you want guidance on how to get what you want, look at the left. Otherwise, you might as well just ride that plane straight into the ground with the left. They got it going on when it comes to organization and when it comes to subversion. If you want to truly rebel against the left, then you need to study the left And you need to study the literally 100 years that they've been coordinating, and you need to get on the ball and coordinating your own groups nationwide. The left is coordinated completely from all levels. Man, it's going to be painful. It's only got a couple more seconds.
I agree with you. I think the outfit can make you smile, but the situation itself is very serious, and it's...
He's an idiot. I don't even know his name. He's an idiot. Okay. Now, in contrast to that, this is the woman who that is accusing Governor Cuomo of sexual harassment. And remember, the media is they're hardly covering her, right? They're covering like these are increasing allegations, but and they're actually talking about this stuff more than the deaths of literally thousands and thousands and thousands of elderly people. Many of them were never reported because they didn't actually die in the homes. They were released to their families, and then they end up in a hospital dying because they released them with COVID that they'd caught in these elderly clinics, nursing homes, or a lot of these people were literally put in an ambulance and driven to the hospital where they died, and they didn't count them in the numbers. And Cuomo and them know that, and they've suppressed that. That's the breaking news that's coming out more and more. This is starting to look more and more like a conspiracy than anything I've seen in recent years, all the way from the governor himself through his aides down into the actual businesses. People have conspired to work together in order to keep this information at bay until Trump got out of office and they thought their problems would be over with. But because of the family members of the people that died that have refused to give this up, well, it stayed on the forefront. And believe it or not, Ron Kim is probably the one politician who's done more for this than anybody. He's a leftist from the legislature in the state of New York. But he's got enough morals and ethics to look at something and say, this needs to be talked about. This is a problem. He also had a relative that was in one of these homes. So listen to this young woman, 25 years old, I believe. I don't know her name, and where I'm playing the video from, I can't. We're gonna have to wait for weirdo Nora O'Donnell to tell us.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. There are a lot of headlines as we come on the air, including new fallout tonight over states loosening coronavirus restrictions.
All right, move on past that because it's happening. Get over it.
We're going to get to that in just a moment, but we're going to begin with breaking news because for the first time tonight, one of the women accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is speaking out to CBS News on camera, detailing what she says was clear sexual harassment by the powerful Democrat and head of the National Governors Association. Cuomo's former executive assistant, Charlotte Bennett, says the governor asked. Okay,
so Charlotte Bennett, who was an executive assistant to the governor. So she saw the governor every day. And you may think, hearing this, okay, this is another person that came out with these, with this sexual harassment complaint. But here's the difference between Charlotte Bennett and, let's say, the woman who I can't even remember her name that accused Kavanaugh, okay? She was accusing Kavanaugh of something that happened 40 years before when they were in high school. And it was, according to her, harassment. It wasn't rape. It wasn't assault. None of that. It was teenagers at a party. And listen, we don't even know if this happened. I don't even think it did happen. But that's what she was accusing him of. Charlotte Bennett is accusing the governor of doing something last year during the height of COVID. And she did something that is right, which many people don't do. I've said for a long time, if somebody harasses you and you're in fear because they're your boss, write it down on a piece of paper and get your friend to witness it, seal it, and send it to yourself and put that in a drawer and leave it there sealed. And then when you get ready, you can pull that out and you'll have written evidence and witness testimony. Now, what she did was kept the text messages between her and her friend because she had texted her immediately and said, this just happened. It was weird. And so that stood and stands as a record that she felt this way immediately when it happened. She didn't just wait to come out and make this story up. So that I commend her on doing that. And this young woman is a very brave person. She's very brave. Andrew Cuomo is he's a predator. And I think it's coming out more and more. And I'll tell you what I think it is, to be honest with you. With a lot of these guys, he's 65 years old, I believe. A lot of these older men get on testosterone when they're older, and they don't know how to handle it. And at 60-something years old, it reminds me of my old dog Rico, right before he lost his libido, and he'd go around humping everything. That's the way these guys are at 60-something years old. They think that they just have an uncontrolled libido. And when you add that to, well, in the case of Cuomo, a almost psychopathic type of narcissistic type of attitude where he just believes he owns it all. He believes everybody, he's a megalomaniac. He believes everybody bows to him. And that's how he is. Well, then, you're going to have these young women that are harassed. And typically what happens is once one opens up the gate, the flood happens. And this poor girl, and the fear in her eyes, if you watch this, it's tremendous. Let's listen.
Her intimate and inappropriate questions about her personal life, all she says in an attempt to sleep with her. The governor, who became an international celebrity for his handling of the early days of the pandemic in New York, is now facing allegations that his administration covered up COVID deaths at nursing homes, along with allegations from 3 women that he sexually harassed them.
Okay, let me just say this one thing, all right? Stop making politicians celebrities. That's like making your manager at the sandwich shop a celebrity. I mean, do your job. In fact, politicians should be held to a standard that if they don't do their job, they're going to be immediately removed. No celebrity.
On Wednesday, Cuomo publicly apologized, saying he was sorry if he acted in a way that made anyone feel uncomfortable. But as you'll hear tonight, Charlotte Bennett says that apology did not go far enough, calling him a textbook abuser. Governor Cuomo said that he has never propositioned anybody. Do you believe that he was propositioning you?
Yes.
For what?
Sex.
In the spring of 2000.
Okay, before we get to this, okay, and I'm sorry I keep interrupting this soundbite because I'm going to let it play, is I want you to keep in the back of your mind while you're listening to this. That other interview and the reason I played that first is because I want you to see the contrast between some idiot who went into the Capitol building dressed like Ronald McDonald on steroids and an interview that was absolutely horrendous. It sounded like it was by a 15-year-old. And while I don't agree with Norah O'Donnell's politics and a lot of the things that she does, this is a good interview. And it's not completely, she has a couple things that she says in there that are her opinion, but it's almost as like she's trying to not cast a darkness upon Cuomo. But overall, it's a more journalistic interview. And listen to what the girl is saying about and I need to stop saying girl for those guys out there that does offend people, young woman, what she is saying about Cuomo and the seriousness of what he has done versus that first interview with a guy who had good intentions for the right reasons and made the mistake of going in and partaking in something that where some people died. Or a young woman got shot by Capitol Police, and it was made to be a mockery of the nation. But this guy overall, if you look at what he did and the severity in one day of what he did versus this megalomaniac Cuomo, you're going to see a contrast between what's really bad and what is a misdemeanor.
2020, New York was the epicenter of the COVID crisis.
The pandemic was obviously stressful for all of us, and he was on TV nearly every day talking about it.
You make that gown look good.
So you think all this national...
Now, you could hear that in the background is where the nurse came up with a shot and he said that you make that gown look good. I mean, he can't stop himself from saying these things because he's a predator, right? he's not like a lion, he's like a hyena. But when the hyena is out there on the African plains, the hyena is always looking for a target. That's just the way it is. It's always looking for a meal, an opportunity to strike. And that's this guy. He can't stop himself.
Attention may have emboldened him.
Absolutely. I think he felt like he was untouchable in a lot of ways.
Bennett says their professional relationship took a turn on May 15th when she alleges the governor started asking her about her love life and then became fixated, repeating over and over again her history as a sexual assault survivor.
So he goes, "You were raped. You were raped. You were raped and abused and assaulted."
Another key encounter happened on June 5th when Bennett says she was called into Cuomo's office to take dictation, and he told her to turn off the tape recorder.
And then he explains at that point that he is looking for a girlfriend. He's lonely. He's tired.
You've just finished dictation, and the governor is telling you he's lonely and looking for a relationship.
Yes. He asked if I had trouble enjoying being with someone because of my trauma.
This seems highly inappropriate.
Yeah. The governor asked me if I was sensitive to intimacy.
In his office?
Yes. During the workday.
You have been quoted as saying that he also asked you about if you'd ever been with an older man.
Yeah. He asked me if age difference mattered. He also explained that he was fine with anyone over 22.
And how old are you?
25.
What were you thinking as he's asking you these questions?
I thought, he's trying to sleep with me. The governor's trying to sleep with me. And I'm deeply uncomfortable, and I have to get out of this room as soon as possible.
And to be clear, what made you think that he was trying to sleep with you?
Without explicitly saying it, he implied to me that I was old enough for him and he was lonely.
Text messages sent by Bennett to a friend and reviewed by CBS News memorialize her encounter with Cuomo immediately afterwards. Bennett tells her friend the governor, quote, talked about age differences in relationships. The friend who verified the messages asks, wait, what? Did he do something? Bennett responds, no, but it was like the most explicit it could be. How did you respond to those questions?
I responded honestly. And when I was even thinking of coming forward, I think that was where I held the most shame. And that, like, I really was uncomfortable.
Why did you feel shame?
I feel like people put the onus on the woman to shut that conversation down. And by answering, I was somehow engaging in that or enabling it, when in fact I was just terrified.
People will watch this and say, why didn't you get up and leave?
It didn't feel like I had a choice.
He's your boss.
He's my boss. He's everyone's boss.
Governor Cuomo said in a statement that what he said may have, quote, been misinterpreted. Did you misinterpret him?
No. I understood him loud and clear. It just didn't go the way he planned.
I never knew at the time I was making anyone feel uncomfortable.
Did you watch Governor Cuomo's apology?
I did. It's not an apology. It's not an issue of my feelings. It's an issue of his actions. The fact is that he was sexually harassing me, and he has not apologized for sexually harassing me. And he can't even use my name.
And we reached out to Governor Cuomo's office to respond to Charlotte Bennett's claims. They directed us to the governor's apology yesterday and asked people to wait for results of the state attorney general's investigation. And there's more news from our interview.
That is chilling. That is chilling. And Charlotte Bennett is her name. She's listen, I don't use the word hero often, but what she just put herself through, I mean, that's tough. She's in a tough position because I'm sure she feels like she did something wrong, and she didn't do anything wrong. That was a chilling description of a predator in action, is what you just heard. Chilling. And while this is playing out in this interview, a state senator from New York, actually, she's not just a state senator, she's the majority. Let me see. Let me look her up again here real quick. She is Senator Stewart Cousins is her name. She is the New York State Senate Majority Leader. And she came out and said that we should wait to see if another person comes forward before we do anything to Cuomo. So according to her, there should be at least a minimum of 4 accusations before you get rid of, you ask somebody to step down or you get rid of them. I mean, that's the most ridiculous and like subhuman thing I've ever heard anybody say. And that's who's running New York, by the way. You idiots for electing these people. What do you again, I say this all the time. Stop looking at things from liberal, conservative. Start looking at ethics and morals, and if somebody's capable of fixing things. And if it's not broken, don't worry about it. We'll work it out. We'll get it. Like if somebody's hungry and they need, let's get together as people and fix it and feed people. You don't see any of these liberals that vote these weirdos who talk about these social causes. You don't see any of those people who vote them into office going down and working together to clean up the inner city, to help out in the inner city, to give hope and guidance to young people who grow up poor or wanting to be somebody. You don't see them going and helping give places they don't open up their homes to homeless people to allow homeless people in when it's cold. You don't see any of those people doing that. They elect these people in their self-righteous manner as though they're going to fix it when there's no intention to fix any of this stuff by these politicians. The reason why we're in the position that we're in, which I said earlier, is because the American people don't take ownership of this nation. They want somebody else to fix it, or they just they can't unify, and that's why things are the way that they are. So I don't want to shift gears completely from this. I talked about Cuomo's advisors and these elderly clinics and how everybody seems to be conspiring to keep this information downplayed. So I'm going to move on from that. I do want to say one other thing about COVID. It seems as though a Japan supercomputer shows doubling masks offer little help preventing viral spread. Can somebody just fire Dr. Fauci, please? He's so worthless, this guy. I don't know what kind of expert he ever was, but he's a worthless expert now. Anyway, I just wanted to say real quick about 2 things. The Democrats are renewing a push for the War Powers Act after Biden's Syria strike. So Biden struck the Iranians in Syria. I don't know what good came out of that. It just came out of nowhere. And I don't know. You can always guarantee when the Democrats get into office, they're going to start bombing and potentially putting us into war. It never fails to happen. Never fails. So I'm not surprised that Joe Biden went and ordered this. However, this whole War Powers Act, they're trying to do is give Congress the final approval on any military strikes that happen. And here's the problem with that, is that the president needs this power. He's the commander-in-chief, and he should be the commander-in-chief. And his power is to make quick, decisive attacks and wage war for upwards of 90 days without congressional approval. Why is that important? Well, for one, because it allows the military to move fast. And that's important when you're going against enemies in this day and age where literally they could fly over and hit you, or they're going to attack somebody right there, like Iraq and Kuwait, where it's border countries over there. And we went over there, although I think that whole war was stupid as well. But in the case of the War Powers Act, why do we need the president to have this besides speed? First of all, the Congress they're a bunch of fools that can't get anything done, period. And secondly, here's the important thing to remember about this. It's very important that we hold politicians to the standard, and if they don't do a good job, we get rid of them. And if the president, see, you don't want the war powers in the hands of a bunch of people, because you're not going to hold them to standard. You're not going to say, well, those 300 people shouldn't have made that decision, and you're never going to convict all those people or get them out of office. It's better to have one person in control of that power so that they can be measured and punished. They're going to be, because of that, they're going to be more reluctant to use it, and to use it in an effective manner. That's why that's important, and that's why the president is the commander in chief. That's all I'm going to say about that. The last thing, though, that I want to cover is, again, when you look at headlines, you have to be careful. You have to look at what the story is behind the headlines. And I looked at this story on foxnews.com about Kentucky bill would make it a crime to insult police officers. And I thought, come on. This is, just the opposite of defunding police, is to make them too powerful, right? Take away your freedom of speech. You can't even insult the police officer. Until when I read down here, and it said that that the state Senate Bill 211 passed by a 7-3 vote. How big is their Senate? And basically, what's important about this is that it makes insults or taunts at a police officer to the point where the taunts provoke violent response. That is going to be illegal. So you see these people in riots, and they get up in the cop's face, right in their face, and they're flipping them off, and they're saying things, about their mom or whatever, and it gets to a boiling point sometimes where the officer will act. Because, you can't sit there and take that. It's very difficult to sit there and take that when if you give them an inch, they're going to pound you. And so a lot of police officers react, and then they either overreact or they get goaded into acting. And really, that's not fair. They should be able to act on this stuff before it gets to that level, because to me, that's an imminent threat, right? When they're getting up in their face and they're doing that, they're trying to taunt something to happen. It's no different than trying to cause a riot, right? You're trying to cause a fight between the police and you so you can blame the police. So I agree with that. But if that's the letter of the law. What I don't like, though, is that if a cop is doing something wrong, like in the case of George Floyd, that you don't tell him to get the F off of that guy, or you start yelling at him to get off that guy, you're killing him. I don't think he should be arrested for that. Or if if you don't like cops and you tell them to go F themselves, I don't think you should be arrested for that. I don't agree with it. I think the more respectful a society is, the better it's going to be. But because of free speech, I don't think that you should be put in jail for that. That's the scary part about these laws that people pass. You have to be very careful with this. And again, I'm trying to do this under an hour. We're at 58 minutes, so I'm going to cut it there. And I hope you share this with people over the weekend and subscribe to the podcast, because this is what I'm talking about today is serious stuff, and people need to hear this. So have a great weekend, everybody, and go out, and if you can, get out of the house, get your legs stretched, do something to make yourself feel good. Just do something good, something that's pleasing, and start to live again. It's time to start living. It's going to be summer here pretty soon, and I don't think this lockdown is going to, not that we're completely locked down, but things are going to change. Listen, I predicted it would go one of two ways. It would either get worse, where they completely lock down the nation, which you never know when the Democrats are in charge, they could do that. Or as soon as Trump is out of office, it would magically all start to get better. And that looks the way it's leaning more. So that means summer's coming. Things will start to open up again. If you're depressed or lonely, things will start to blossom and have the opportunity to get out. But if you can, get up this weekend and take a drive, go for a walk, do something. Just do something. Get up and move. As we come to the conclusion of the first week of March 2021, without a doubt, it's just as weird as the rest of the year so far. And one thing I'm seeing that is troubling me greatly is that the leftist narrative of the media, the stuff about white supremacists and domestic terrorism that nobody is seeing, is starting to be used as fact by people like the FBI director, Christopher Wray, where he goes before Congress and cites things that I'm not hearing from anybody else in the FBI. I'm only hearing it from politicians on the left and the mainstream media. Their narrative has now somehow become facts for law enforcement. That's troubling. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Subscribe and share. We're out of here.